Okay, here we are. It is version 0.7. Welcome. Thank you for coming back and continuing with this series, dedicating a little bit of your time to break down this big problem and solve it task by task. And hopefully you're seeing the kind of value in kind of building things up little by little by little. And kind of seeing this grow and bloom into something. Now we've got quite a lot of code. This really got out of hand, and we're going to add a lot more today. So in our version 0.7, our aim today is to get this player name input screen, and hopefully get some way to adding in. I've said an AI option. We're going to add in some if statements that means that you're kind of playing against the computer. It's not artificial intelligence by any means, okay? But it is it is a computer making a decision, okay? So if like there's a spectrum of artificial intelligence, and like this end is like doing like crazy stuff like diagnosing cancer, we're on this end like winning a game of noughts and crosses. So that's what we're going to do today. So let's jump right into it. Let's jump into our main.py function. And last version we got this main menu working, so if I press run on this, and hopefully this will appear. Nope, it's not appearing. Oh, come on, repl, please just work. Loves to take the wind out of my sails. Anyway, hopefully that will kind of catch up with itself and run in a second. So I'm just going to close down all of these. It's annoying that I can't. There might be a command to like close all of these, but it's quite nice to be able to kind of look at them at a glance and scroll through these. It might start being worth me zooming out a little bit on my text editor. I'll have a think. Okay, so we had the new game screen here. We've create game screen. We've got create main menu screen. So we're also going to add in a method here where we create the input screen. Okay, so I'm going to say def create input screen. And we're going to pass in the self. And this is going to be very much like create game screen. No, it's not going to be much like create game screen. It's going to be very much like create main menu screen, right? We're going to have a bunch of stuff on there. Is it going to work now? No, it doesn't like it. Oh, because I've just put this in. Let's just return true here. See, it works when there's an error in my code. It won't work when it's all nice and ready to run. Great, fantastic. So you remember that we got this main menu in, right? And we can create a new session. Now, when I press new session, it's taking me straight to this game, but I want it to take me to like an intermediate page where I can put in the players' names and decide whether I want an AI or not. So what we're going to want is we are going to want a box, an entry field for the two different player names, and we're going to want to store them as well in our noughts and crosses class. So up here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say self.player, what shall I do? Player names? Ooh. To store it in an array or to store it separate. Let's store it in an array. That makes the most sense. So I'm going to say player names equals, and I'm going to say an array. I'm going to say tk.stringvar, capital S, capital V. And then I'm going to put a comma, I'm going to do another tk.stringvar. Okay, and what this means is we'll be able to assign these string vars to our entry fields when the player types in their name, and then we can get those from there. Okay, so that can be where we store them, and then we can refer to them later on in our program. So now what we want to do is we want to put some information in, right? So we probably want a title. So I'm going to add in a tk.label, and we're going to have quite a few labels, okay? So I'm going to say .grid, and I've kind of got ahead of myself here because really the first thing we need is to create our input screen. So I'm going to say self.input screen, input screen, did I call it screen? Yes, input screen, equals tk.frame. Right, and we've got this idea of a frame containing everything we want in it, and then we can swap between them. I should have called these frames rather than screens, but I changed it from window to screen last version. I'm not going to change it from screen to frame this version. But we're going to say tk.frame, and we're going to give it self.window. Okay, we're going to tell it that's who it belongs to. Self.input screen, I think we can just kind of make them up inside the methods. We don't have to declare them up here, but I do like to just put them up here. So that I know at a glance that all the different properties I've got might not be the most efficient way, but it helps when you're starting out, and especially like being able to just come up here and see all my properties at once rather than hunt through all of the methods for it can be very helpful. So we're going to add in a label which is going to be our title. So we're going to say, what should we call this? Player input. My brain has died already. What we're gonna call this? We're gonna call this I don't know, player input screen, player information. Let's just call it player information. I'm sure I'll think of a much better. My unconscious brain will think of a much better idea for this. Player information. Yeah, let's call it player information. And we're going to pop it into a grid. Also, in this label, we need to give it our self.input screen itself as its parent. So this label belongs to the input screen. This input screen belongs to the window. Okay. So we're going to pop it in a grid. We're going to put it in... How many rows are we going to have? We're probably going to have 4 columns at least. So it's going to be in row 0, row equals 0. We're going to say column equals 1, and we're also going to say column span equals 2. Or maybe we should just say column span equals 4, and then say column equals 0. Yeah, and then it will just be in the middle somewhere, hopefully. Fingers crossed. We can always come back and tweak that. So we've got ourselves a label here. So now what we want is, we want player 1's name. Yeah, so we're going to add another label. So let's, I'm going to put a comment here. Ooh. Player 1 information. So we're going to need a label. So tk.label. And we can instantly grid a label. So we're going to say .grid. Oh, tk.label .grid. And we are going to also have, notice I'm not filling out the insides just yet, I'm just kind of giving a skeleton to this. I'm going to have a tk.entry, and an entry is like a kind of box that you can type into. And we have to store that as a variable, so I'm going to say, let's say player, let's do pothole case, let's stick to it, player1 name equals tk.entry, and then we'll say player1 name.grid. Now, if we fill this out nicely for player 1, there should be just a couple of changes we can make to do player 2, and we can just copy and paste it. I could be more thoughtful about this and do it in like a loop, but it seems unnecessary. Or maybe it doesn't. If you want a challenge, try and put this in a loop. We've already set the player names as an array, so it should be fairly easy to loop through that and use that to create this. I'm just gonna take the easy road. I'm gonna just duplicate this. It's not something that is great if we were doing this over and over and over again, but as we're doing it twice and there's only ever going to be 2 players, I'm not too worried about it. So our label is going to have the frame as its our input screen as its parent. So I'm going to say tk.label self.input screen. We are going to have the text be player 1 name. Player 1 name. And is that all we need? We just then need to put it in the grid, right? So we're going to say the row is equal to, let's put it in row 2, because we've got the title. I'd quite like, actually, to take another label. Let's copy this. And let's pop it on row 1, and it's just going to be an empty string. Sometimes this works for me, sometimes it doesn't. But I'd like to make a line, right? I'm sure... I'm in no doubt that there is a better way to do this, to make some space. This is a botch job, right? But it works. So if it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid. So I'm sticking to it. So we've got our kind of title, player information, and then we've got, let's actually just name this. So I'll just set title of screen. So then we've got our player 1 information. So we're putting a label in, and then we're putting in an entry. So our entry is going to go... Oh, we haven't finished putting this in. Sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. So row equals 2, we're going to say column is equal to 1. So it's going to go in column 1. And we might have to put in... No, that should... Yeah, that should be fine. That should be fine. Okay, lovely. So we've got the grid there, and then we're going to add in the entry. So we're going to say self, we're going to give it the same thing, so self.input screen. And what are we going to do for this entry? Well, we need to assign it a text variable. So text variable, and, oh no, sorry, it's all one word, text variable. Text variable equals, and we are going to take self.playernames at position 0. Right, so we're going to set it to that first tk.string var that we set up earlier. And then for the second player, we're going to use the one in position 1, so the second tk.string var. And this will allow us to see what the value of this entry is at any given time, and we can also set it and get it, so we can like store that variable. We can also change it if we want to. So that's good. So then we want to put this on the same row as our label, but in the column over, right? So we're going to say row is equal to 2 and column is equal to 2. Yeah, column equals 2. Okay, lovely. Now we need to, I want to test this as we go along, right? So I've written enough code here to be making some good progress here. Let's actually start sewing this into the program, make sure it's working, and then we can keep adding to it. So create input screen. When do we do this? Well, whenever we create all the other screens, which I think is up here, yeah. So in our initialize function, when we make a new version or a new instance of the Noughts and Crosses class, this initialize function will run. It will set all of these variables to these positions, and then it will call these functions, create the drop-down menus, create the main menu screen, create the game screen, and we're also going to say self.create input screen. So we're going to create that screen. Now what we want to do is we want to, down here, where is it? Make button active, start new session, return to session, display main menu, here we go. So as well as having display main menu, we're going to say def display input screen. Ah! I jumped across, I didn't mean to be there. Input screen. That really threw me. We're going to pass in the self because we are writing a method for a class, and so we always need the self. And I don't know what that was. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use exactly the same syntax here, self.something.tkraise, but we're going to use self.input screen rather than menu screen. Self.input screen.tkraise. And I could have probably written one method that would allow us to change to any screen, but it's just, it's a line of code. It's okay. Okay, so now what we're going to do is if we exit out of this, when we press new session, instead of it taking us to the game like it does now, I want it to take us to that input screen. So this new session here, we need to display the input screen. So where do we make this new session? We make it on the main menu screen. So if I come up here, create main menu screen, let's go into this method here. And we can see that we've got this these button commands. Yeah, so start new session, return to session, and window.destroy. So rather than start new session, what I want to do is I want to display input screen. Okay, now, if all has gone well, this input screen should get made. I should be able to press this, and nothing happens. Oh, what have I done wrong? I've missed something really obvious, haven't I? We created the input screen. That all happened. That got done. Oh, I didn't sticky it. I didn't attach it. Okay, yeah. Let's get rid of this return true. I don't need to return true here. What I've not done is I've not gridded my input screen. So I need to say self.input screen. There's a phrase every version, it seems, that I say too many times, and it starts really annoying me, and input screen is becoming that phrase. So we're going to say self.inputScreen.grid, and we are going to say row equals 0. We're going to say column is equal to 0, and we are going to sticky it to news. Okay, fantastic. So here we go, new session. Hooray! Fantastic. Look at this. So now we are being taken to this screen, okay? So we're going to add 2 more fields here. We're going to add a space of player 2 name. Can you see what I mean by the entry box here? Yeah, so we can type in, we can type in anything we like here. And we're going to add two buttons as well, okay? One to go back, and so one to like cancel out, cancel button, and one to one to start the new game. Okay, so we're gonna have a start button and a cancel button, as well as copying this. So let's copy this. Let's go back to our create input screen. Where are you? Where have you gone? Here we are. So we've got our player one information. We're just gonna copy this, and we're gonna paste it below, and we're just gonna change a few key things. Now, player one name, we're gonna change this to player two name. This variable here, right off the bat. We're gonna change the text to player two name. And instead of being in row 2, it's going to be in row 3. It's going to be in the same column though. And our text variable in this entry, so in player 2 name here, actually, let me change this column to player 2 information. Let me change this comment to player 2 information. So this entry here, tk.entry, right at the end, we are saying text variable equals self.playernames, and we want position 1, not 0. And lastly, what we want to do is we want to say player2 name.grid and put this entry in row 3 as well. So now if we run this again and we press new session, we can see that we've got a spot to put both names in. Okay. Now let's add two buttons to this, and this is as pretty as it's going to get, I'm afraid. If you want to spend time making this look better, please do. I encourage you to. But we're going to focus on function for today, and I have planned to add a little bit of style to this. I don't want this to be any more than 10 versions, this sequence. So yeah, if we have time at the end, we will add some style to this. But you can tell that it's quite low on my priorities list, right? So we've got this, and what's really good is we've linked the values of these boxes to a variable in our program. Okay, so that's really helpful. Now we're going to put in these buttons. So we've got buttons when we make the main menu. So I'm just going to copy the syntax here for this button. I'm going to copy this whole thing here, and we're just going to tweak it. Okay. The good artist steals. The bad artist steals. No. The bad artist borrows. The good artist steals. Okay. So we're going to have our let's have our cancel button first. Cancel underscore button, oh dear, equals tk.button. We're going to give it our self.input screen. We'll maybe make the width 10 rather than 20. The text is going to equal cancel. Ooh. Cancel. And its state, well, we're not going to, it's always going to be active. We don't need to put state. We don't need to worry about that. Let's get rid of that. And the command, well, what we want to do is we want to display the main menu. Yeah, so we've got a command for that, self.display main menu. So that's going to cancel out and go back to the main menu. Now, one thing that I want to happen when we go back to the main, oh, I don't need the brackets there. When we go back to the main menu is any values that we typed into here just get overwritten, okay? So if I typed in Bob as player 2, and then I go back to the main menu, so if I press exit, I should go back to the main menu, yep, and then go to new session again, you can see Bob's still there, right? So if I go exit, back to the main menu, new session, Bob's still there. So what I want is as soon as we go back to the main menu, I want everything wiped in here, because if new people were approaching this game and coming into it, they wouldn't want to see the old people's details. So that's it's important to me, you know. So we're going to have our cancel button dot grid. Sorry, I'm having 3 thoughts at a time here. I'm trying to focus on one at a time. So this is going to be in row 4 and in column 1. Yeah, why not? Column 1 makes sense. So that's our cancel button, and we're going to display the main menu. So let's come down to our display main menu. And what we want to do is we want to reset the entries, yeah, the player input. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make a function for this, a method. I'm going to say def reset player. I've said it once and I've said it before. Player inputs. If you're in doubt, just make a method. That's all you need to do. It'll get you through life. Just keep making methods. Reset player input. So we're going to say for player name in self dot. You could call that anything for player in self dot or for name in self dot. I've called it player name. Why not? Self dot player names. We're going to go through each one and we're going to say player name dot set. Because it's a string var, we have to say dot set. And then we're going to give it the value of nothing, right? So that's just going to wipe it. Okay, lovely. So we should be able to come down here. When we display the main menu now, we should be able to say self dot reset player names. Ooh, reset player inputs. And that will just wipe them. So now we should be able to run this. And we probably have a cancel button as well. Look at that button. That is too big. That is too big. Right, first point of order. Before I even test that, we're going to say height 1 and width like 8. How does that look? Okay, more respectable. I also want it to be over 1, so I'm actually going to put this cancel button in column 2. Lovely. What I'm also going to do, these entry fields, I feel like they're too big for one column. So I'm going to have them be the span of 2 columns. So where we have player 1 name and player 2 name equals tk.entry, I'm going to say, when we grid them down here, I'm going to say column equals 2, column span equals 2. And I'm going to say the same here, so that they take the width of 2 columns. Say column span equals 2. Okay, and what this means is that I can put my start button kind of underneath these entry boxes as well. Okay, lovely. So I should now be able to type in like Bob here. Okay, and I can press cancel. That takes me back to the main menu, and when I press new session, we can see that it's been wiped. And also what's really nice is throughout this process, this continue button is staying grayed out, which is great, right? Because that's exactly what we want to happen, because there's nothing to continue at the moment. So we're not being taken to the game screen. Fantastic. What happens if I press rematch? No. Nothing. Okay, great. Because the game's over, we can't rematch. Good. Okay. So our start button, let's put that in. So I'm going to copy this whole cancel button code. Again, could have used a loop. Remember how we made the buttons for the main menu? We did those 3 buttons and we made a loop. Yeah, that was quite nice. That was quite efficient. And I'm kind of thinking of that and thinking, could be doing that here, but not the end of the world. We're doing it both ways. Then you can get a flavour for how you'd prefer to do something, right? And the kind of the good, it highlights the good programming we did in the earlier one. Because there's only 2 buttons here, if there were more than 2 buttons, I would probably put it in a loop, but it just doesn't seem like enough to be worth it. So I'm going to store the button widths and the button heights in button widths and the button heights in variables here. So button height equals 1, and so I can just update it once here, and then I can just pop these in here for both of our buttons, and then they'll stay consistent, right? Again, if I was using a loop, I wouldn't have to worry about this too much, but let's pop that in there, let's pop that in there. Okay, so our start button equals a tk.button. We're giving it our self.input screen. The width is button width, the height is button height, the text is start, and the command will be create new session. Start new session, okay? So this is the command that we want to run. Okay, okay. I'm having many thoughts here. So this is the command we want to run. So instead of display main menu, we want to start a new session. Command equals start new session. So that's the command for our start button. And we're going to put this in row 4, but we're going to put it in column 3. So we should be able to run this new session, and now we have a cancel button and a start button, right? The cancel goes back to the main screen. Start starts my game. Now, the player names have started as Alice and Bob, and so we need to address that. And we need to think about when we are creating the players. Now, I've got a feeling we're creating them in the stats area. yeah, when we create the stats area, we are creating the players, and the players are actually stored in the stats area. Is that fair to say? Is that fair to say? For player in self.players, what does this do? Self.players equals players. We pass stats area the players. So when we make the game screen, sorry, so much code scrolling. Let's minimize some of this. Create main menu screen. Okay, when we create the game screen, we say self.create players. Okay, so it's screaming out to me that each time we start a new session, we just call create game screen, right, and make a brand new game screen. So down here, are we doing that? We're not. So what I'm going to do is right at the start, I'm going to say self.create game screen. Okay, and that is going to run each time we start a brand new session. It's going to wipe everything. Okay, and that means actually that I don't need to call it up here. I'm just going to comment this out to remind myself that I got rid of it, because if something breaks later down the line, I can be like, oh yeah, I got rid of that there. Always plan to break things. It's inevitable. So now what we want to do is, in our create game screen, we say self.create players. That method is up here. So here we are creating our two players, okay? One player with the X and one player with the O. Now we know what the player names are, right? So I'm going to say if right, let's think about this. I'm going to have default names equals, and we're going to have Alice and Bob, right? So if you don't put in your own names, if someone doesn't enter their names, we're going to add in Alice and Bob, and we are going to just give them placeholder names, okay? So we're going to say for I in range, the length of our default names we're going to say player name equals, and we're going to say self dot player names at position I. So I is going to start at 0 and then go to 1. So player names, and this is where our tk.string var is stored, okay, which is the exact what is it? It's the exact value of whatever we typed in that entry box. So we're going to get that. We're going to say player names.i.get. And then we're going to say if player name, let's say if the length of player name is greater than 1, no, let's say let's just say if player name is an empty string. If player name is an empty string, then we're going to say player name is equal to player name. What is player name equal to? Player name is equal to our default names at position I. Okay, because we're doing this in a loop, we can be quite clever about this, okay? So we're looking to see what our player name is, okay? So we're getting it from that input field. So player names at position I, we're going to have a look at that first entry, player 1 name, and we're going to check to see whether it's an empty string. If it is an empty string, we're going to change what the value of this is to our default names at position I. So in this loop, we'll start at 0 and we'll pull Alice out, okay? If it's not, however, we're not going to overwrite that, and we're going to stick to whatever the user entered. They might have entered okay? Whatever they've entered, Bob, Alice, George, any name, that's all fine. So now what we want to do is we want to add our player to self.players, yeah? So we are going to say player equals player. And we want to store x and 0 in an array as well. So we're going to say symbols equals, and we're going to just do exactly what we did here. Now I'm going to get rid of the code at the bottom because we're loopifying everything. So we've got our cross and our naught. So I'm going to say player equals player, and I'm going to give it symbols at position I, and I'm going to give our player name. Okay, and I can get rid of these 2 lines of code now. And then the last thing I need to do is I need to say self.players at position I. Self.players, does that exist? Self.players, okay. I'm going to put in 2 empty strings. I can't help myself. Okay, I'm going to put 2 empty strings so that Python knows that this is an array with 2 things in it, okay? This is at position 0, it's got an empty string, and this is at position 1, it's got an empty string. And then when we come down here to create the player names, we're going to say, actually, that thing at position 0, we're going to actually set that to our player now. Okay. Oh, that thing at position 1, we're going to set that to our player now. Okay. And then should we already have players in that array and we created new players, then we'll just overwrite them with our new players. Player equals player, symbols I, player name. This is great. It's all just variable names. This will work. This will work. So one thing I do want to do, when we create the game screen, so we create the players, we create the screen, okay, that's all good. Actually, so this is start new session. So we create the game screen, and then what we want to do is, once we've created our game screen, so when we create a game screen, we create our players, I then want to reset the player inputs as well. So if you come back out of the game, although you'd have to return to the main menu. So I don't, no, we don't actually need to do that at all. Let's just run this. Let's just see if this works. I'll be so happy. Player 1 name. Look, can you notice that the window is much smaller because we've not created the game screen yet? That's something I didn't anticipate. So I'm going to put in, I've got to think of 2 separate names that aren't Alice and Bob now. Let's put in George and Steve. Beautiful British names. Let's press start, and there is a big error. For key in player.stats, struct object has no attribute stats. Okay, so create stats area. Okay, cool, no problem. So line 7 in init stats area.py. So let's come over here, create stats area with the window. Yep, and we've got our players, and it's saying for here, for player in self.players. Okay, so when we create the stats area, we need to give it the players. Now it looks like we're creating the stats area before we're creating the game area, maybe, and that's giving it an issue. So let's just go back to our main function. Where does this get called from? Start new session, create game screen. Okay, yeah, so there's something wrong here in create game screen that I've neglected. So we create the players. Our game screen equals tk.frame. We add the margins. A stats area. We add in self.players. We have created the players. Oh, no. Okay. I've put this line on the wrong. I've put this line in the wrong place. Okay, so regardless of whether the player name is an empty string or not, I still need to do this self.players I equals player. I had it indented into the if statement. I don't want it there. Okay, I want it outside of this if statement, but still inside this for loop. Okay, so it's very important that it goes on in this position here, not indented, but also not too far out. It needs to be in that for loop outside of the if statement. A classic blunder. Okay, George and Steve want to play my lovely George and Steve want to play Noughts and Crosses, and there's another error. Of course there is. About local variable player reference before assignment. Self.players I equals player. 91 in create players. Okay, 91 create players. Self.players I. Self.players already exists. So why are you unhappy with that? Local variable player reference before assignment. Oh. Oh. God. Oh, right. This line also needs to be outside the if statement. The if statement only wants to change the name of what player name is. I'm just throwing everything in this if statement. Like, yeah, go for it. No. Okay. Let's put some white space in here as well. If our player name is an empty string, we're going to set our player name to one of the default names, right? If they've not bothered to put anything in, we'll just give them a default name. That's all we need to do. And then with our player name, which is either going to be what they typed in, or if they didn't type anything in, it's going to be one of the default names. Then we're going to create our new player. Then we're going to set our new player. Right. One last time. Let's get our man George. Oh no. You can tell I'm rushing. We've got Geroweg. But here we go. We've got Geroweg and we've got Steve, and they are in the game. Fantastic. So this is working nicely. And I should be able to... Yeah, Steve went. He's laid a 0. Played. Let me just move this down a little bit. And we have George winner, Steve winning. So you got 3 noughts in a row. That's how does this game work? And now I should be able to press rematch. And now it's George's turn. So he can go first. He wins. Fantastic. Steve loses. So he's got a win. Steve's got a loss. Now I should be able to go exit. And now I can either continue. So I can go back into this game. So we can see here it's just as it was. Okay, I can't change anything. Or I can exit and I can continue. I can do this all day. It's so good. And otherwise, I can rematch. So I can have another match. Or, I'm bored of noughts and crosses. I don't want to play with you. Okay, I'll go and ask Barbara. Barbara, would you like to play with me? So now Barbara comes in and she plays with Steve. And here we go. Now Barbara and Steve are playing and they're in a new session and it is working. This is fantastic. Now, one thing that we need to do is we need to add in this AI that I've referenced, okay? It should be relatively straightforward. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to come into player.py. Now, the computer is going to be a player just like our players are, right? But it's just going to have a little bit of extra logic to it. And what we're going to do is we're going to do something... We're going to do something that you can do when you're working with classes in any language called inheritance. So our computer is going to be its own class, but it's going to inherit the player class. So it's going to have everything that the player class has, plus a little bit more, because it needs to know how to take a go, right? So we are going to come down here at the bottom of the player class, and we're going to extend the player class by saying class computer. Should I call it computer? Call it AI if you wanted to. Computer works. And we're going to say that we're going to put player in brackets here. Okay, we're going to say that actually it extends the player class. It is like the player class, but we're going to put a little bit on top. We're going to define an initialize function, just like we would any normal class. But the first thing we're going to do here is we are going to initialize our player class. So we're going to say player dot underscore init underscore, and then we need to pass in the symbol and the name. So we need symbol and name. And we need to pass that into our computer. So it needs a symbol and a name, and then it's going to pass them into the player, okay? So our computer, when it's made, will be just like the player. It will have a waiting text, it will have a turn text, it will have a name. And actually what we're going to do is we're just going to set the name as a default value to computer, okay? So we don't actually have to worry about giving it a name. Okay, fantastic. So this is our computer. Now what we need is somewhere on the input screen to actually say whether we want a computer opponent or not, right? So let's jump back into our main function. We're going to come back to this and we're going to develop it, don't worry. Let's jump back into our main function, and if we go down to where we create our input screen, we need to add a tick box. Now, I can't for the life of me remember how to make a tick box, so I'm going to jump to my favourite website, geeksforgeeks.com, or my favourite website in this series anyway, and links in the description, by the way. And if I come down here, we've got a check button. So you can say check button master option equals value. Okay, fantastic. So we can see here var1 equals int var, variable equals var1. Okay, so let's just copy all of this. Lovely stuff. And let's jump back into our code. And where are we going to put it? Let me just bring up the input screen. Okay, so I think we could probably put it, I don't know, maybe underneath these entry boxes, like in a row between the buttons and the entries. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop it. Obviously, it doesn't matter where I put it in the code, but it's nice for my brain. So we're going to add in the AI option, and yeah, I'm going to refer to it as an AI. I'm telling you 100% that is mislabeling it, but can't help it. And we are going to just paste in this code. So we want to create an int var that tells us whether this box is checked or not. Okay, so we're going to have a computer opponent. So we're going to make a property and increase our ever-expanding list of properties here. So I'm going to have, let's put it underneath player name. So let's say self.computer opponent equals tk.int_var. Okay, so that is going to store whether we've ticked that box or not. Okay, and then we're going to come down here where we've got, where is it? Back to our input screen. And instead of saying variable equals var1 and having this var1 equals int var business, we're going to get rid of this. And we are going to say variable equals self dot, what did I just call it? What did I just call it? Computer opponent. Yeah. I really don't remember typing that. That's really bad, isn't it? So our text is going to be computer opponent. And our check button is going to be tk.checkButton. Instead of being a master, it's going to be, what's it going to be? It's going to be self.inputScreen. And we are going to put it on the row underneath this one, so row 4. So in the grid here, we're going to say row equals 4. We're going to get rid of the sticky. We're going to say column equals 2, and we're going to say column span equals 2. So that should put it nicely under those entry boxes. Now, one thing we do need to do as well is we need to give it a command. So in this button, we can give it a command. So each time it's ticked, a command runs, and this will be really helpful in order for us to be able to like grey out this box and to update whether the computer's playing or not. So we're also going to give this a command, and let's just pop this. Actually, let's just make sure this is working first. Let's make sure this is in here. Okay, it's not in here because I haven't moved my buttons. That's what I meant to do. So our buttons are currently on row 4 as well. We're just going to move them down to row 5. So our cancel button and our start button, we're going to move to row 5. Let's run this. New session. There we go, lovely. So I can tick this box and I can untick it. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to write a method here. We're going to say def computer opponent selected. I'm going to pass the self, and we are going to just print hi, just to see if it works, okay? And behind me here, we should see hi if this works when we tick the box. So we're going to set this as the command, computer opponent selected, and we're literally just doing this to debug it and make sure it works. So our check button has a command. Have I given it yet? No, cool. So I'm going to say command equals, and then computer opponent selected. Of course, it's self.computer opponent selected. I'm going to put a comma there so that this text equals computer opponent doesn't complain at me. These lines are getting long. Okay, so I should be able to run this now, and we should be able to go here, and when I tick this, if you look here, if I tick this, yeah, it says hi. Hi, hi, hi. Okay, fantastic. So we can see there that this is running the function each time I tick or untick it. Okay, now what we can do is we can have this grey out this box. So we've got a disable button. We can actually use this to disable our entry field as well. So it's not really a disable button, but it's like a disable something. Also, what we need to do is we need to store this entry box so that we can actually like interact with it. So instead of calling this player2 name, well, no, actually, what I can do is I can just I can say self.player2 name is equal to player2 name. Okay, and then when we do this, we can then make it active or disable it. So we're going to say if, actually what would be really handy right now is if instead of printing out that, we print out self dot, what did I call it, computer opponent, I should have called that a better name, dot get. Okay, so I just want to see what value they are each time we tick and untick the box. So if I run this, is that not liking this? I should like it. Okay, help. Okay. So you can see there it's a 1 when it is ticked and a 0 when it's unticked. 1 when it's ticked, 0 when it's unticked. So we are going to say state equals self.computer opponent.get, and then we're going to say if state equals 1. So if it's ticked, then we want to grey out, so we want to disable button. So we're going to say self.disable button. Disable button, and we're going to give it self.player2 name. Okay. Else we are going to say self.make button active. And yes, I've said button, but I should have said element or something like that, a kind of neutral term. But this will work hopefully just the same for an entry field. And so we'll say self.player2 name here as well. Okay, moment of truth. So this should just toggle whether we can type in a kind of a player2 name or not, right? So let's run this, new session. So Bob, say, I don't know, Eric, and then computer opponent. We can see Eric's been grayed out now. I can't actually access that or type it. Okay, now what would be really fancy is if we actually change that value, right? So what we'll do is when we disable this button, we will also change what's in that entry. So we will say player names at position1.set, and we're going to set that to computer. So that should overwrite anything that we've written there to computer. If we haven't, then what we want to do is we want to set it to an empty string. So if we're making the button active again, oh no, what have I done? What have I done? Let's copy that. Okay, yeah. And if I haven't, then I want to just clear that. So I'm going to keep that self.playernames at position1.set, and we're going to clear that to just an empty string. So now what's going to happen is, even if in here I press new session and I say Bob and I say, I don't know, Eric, just like I did last time, now when I tick the box, it changes to computer. When I untick it, it goes back to blank. Okay? Tick it, computer. Untick it, back to blank. Quite nice, right? It's very obvious that we've got a computer opponent there, and it's locked it up for us. It's locked that in. Now, when we create our players up here, and I guess the way I'm going to do this means that if you called player2 computer, they wouldn't actually be able to play the game because we'd just create a computer player. We're going to go through our players, and we're going to get our player names, right? If player name is equal to nothing, we're going to say player name equals default names I. What we want to do is we want to say elif player name does not equal computer, Now, the way I'm programming this, if you called both players computer, you would end up with two computers just playing the game together, like instantly, and drawing. So if it doesn't, if their name is not computer, then we're going to make a new player and we're going to add that to self.players. Okay. Otherwise, did I accidentally delete something? No. Otherwise, so else. So if it is called computer, so actually, let's do elif. Player. If player name does not. Okay, player name does not equal computer, so it's only going to run this code. It's going to run it all the time that this is not equal computer. So actually, I can just say else here. Else, we are going to do exactly the same here, but we are going to say computer. The variable name can stay the same. It doesn't make that much of a difference. We're going to say computer equals a new computer, and we're going to pass in symbols I, and we're going to pass in player name. We're going to, if player name equals nothing. Okay, so actually I don't want this to be an elif. Yeah, so I've separated this into two if statements. So if player name is equal to nothing, we reset the player name, okay? And then we want to go on and check whether the player is a computer player or not. So if player name does not equal computer, then player equals player, and self.players I equals a player, equals the player. Otherwise, if their name is computer, then we make a new version of the computer class. We pass in that player name because the player name is computer, and we are going to set self.players I to computer. Okay, fantastic. It works. It works. It's open to corrupt. All my brain can ever think of is this is open to corruption, but it's fine. So we've got from player import player. Actually, now we've got player and we've got computer. So I'm going to go into main, and instead of saying from player import player, I'm going to say from player import star, which will import everything, which will import all. So we're going to import player, and we're also going to import computer. So now down here, when I say computer, it should just work. Computer may be undefined or defined from star imports. Yep, it definitely is defined from star imports. Okay. Should we just run that and see if that is happy? It's running, it's working. We can see there, if I type in Bob, start, okay. Fantastic. So we're pretty much there on the kind of computer front. It's annoying me that this is underlining it. From player import used, unable to detect undefined names. So let's say from player import player, and can I just put comma and computer? Yeah, I can. Okay, so I'm just going to do that instead. So rather than the star, I'm going to do import player and computer. So we have these two imported now. We're passing in the symbol and the player for the computer. So now it is time to actually make the computer's logic, right? And the computer is going to have to look at the game board, and it's going to have to decide where it's going to go next. Now, I was planning to do this this version. This has taken me so long to put this one screen in. Hopefully you can appreciate, I say that, hopefully this does still just work. Let's just double check. George, Mike, start. Yeah, okay, it's working. And then I can I can't rematch because I haven't finished the game, but I can exit and I can press new session and I can do another one. So let's do Linda and Barbara, and let's change Barbara to computer component, start opponent start. Okay, so we've got a little bit of ironing out to do on a computer opponent. I want to have a really good run, a really good hit at actually programming the logic for how the computer works. I don't want to kind of dovetail it into the end of this. So I think this is a nice place to leave it, where we've kind of got this computer opponent set up and ready to go. And now next version 0.8, we can really crack on and complete that. So let's just update this. So we are on version 0.7, And what have we done today? We added the input screen. We also added the computer class. And we added option for computer opponent. So things are looking good. You can see that this is starting to feel like it just kind of has a bit more. It's just kind of working a little bit more, right? So I can continue with this. I can play my game of noughts and crosses. Okay, someone wins. George's status is set to my turn. That's a little bug there. Not sure why that's happened, but I can press rematch. They're both my turn now. Okay, something's completely broken. We'll fix that in the next version. We will add this computer opponent, and this app will really start to come together. Once again, thank you for watching. Thank you for developing along and improving your programming. Maybe, hopefully this has not done more damage than good. And I hope to see you in the next version. Until then, take care, and I'll see you later.